Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Would space aliens look at us as their moral equals? Would they be afraid of us? What do governments know about the whole issue that we don't?
Hey there, welcome to the 471st edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I don't know why I developed a southern accent there for 2 seconds. I'm Ben, and those stimulating questions came from my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. So this evening we bring you an old friend, one of the first guests we ever had when we went on the air in 2008, and one of the greatest names in the area of paranormal research. And you're welcome to call in this evening with any questions or comments. The numbers locally, 401-766-1240 and 800-449-1240 from anywhere in the U.S. or Canada.
Now, before we welcome our guests, I'm going to take a minute to offer a correction that I also offered last night on our CBS edition. Correction to something I said last week. We had lots of listener questions prompted by Ben's and my appearance in the Warner Brothers featurette that goes with this new film, The Conjuring, the story behind which supposedly took place in Harrisville, Rhode Island, right in our immediate listening area. I expressed surprise that Ed and Lorraine Warren never mentioned such a dramatic case to me when I started working with them in late 1972. Now, neither of us has seen the film yet, but several listeners mentioned this doll, Annabelle. And I do remember Annabelle the doll. She was the centerpiece of the Warrens' creepy collection in this subterranean passage between their house and their studio. It's another long story. So I had not made the connection, and I do remember being told something about the case. I'm not saying that I believe it, and Ben and I do stress that this is Hollywood entertainment and not history, science, or even good parapsychology, and certainly not good theology. But my apologies for keeping our guest waiting. Anyway, Stanton Friedman spent his 74th birthday on this show, or nearly so, and now we welcome him on his 79th birthday. Stan is a nuclear physicist, lecturer, and UFO researcher. He earned his graduate and undergraduate degrees in physics from the University of Chicago in 1955 and 1956. Respectively, for 14 years, he worked as a nuclear physicist for such companies as General Electric, General Motors, Westinghouse, TRW Systems, Aerojet General Nucleonics, and McDonnell Douglas Corporation, working in such highly advanced, classified, eventually canceled programs as nuclear aircraft, fission and fusion rockets, and various compact nuclear power plants for space and terrestrial applications. He became interested in UFOs in 1958. I was in kindergarten, Stan, and since 1967 has lectured about them at more than 600 colleges and 100 professional groups in 50 U.S. states, 10 Canadian provinces, and 18 other countries, in addition to various nuclear consulting efforts. He has published more than 90 UFO papers and has appeared on hundreds of radio and television programs, including Larry King Live in 2007 and Twice 2008, and many documentaries. He is the original civilian investigator of the famous Roswell incident and is the co-author or author of 10 books that I know of, and which we will talk about later. His newest book, also co-authored with our good friend Kathleen Martin, is Science Was Wrong, released in June 2010. Stan has provided written testimony at congressional hearings, appeared twice at the United Nations, and been a pioneer in many aspects of ufology. He will be the keynote speaker at the first New England UFO Conference on Saturday, October 26th at the City Hall in Leominster, Massachusetts, not too far from here. Stan lives in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Lovely town.
So Stanton Friedman, after that extremely long biography, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal, and happy birthday.
Well, I'm glad to hear both counts. You know, every birthday is a victory won.
I'm starting to realize that.
That is true.
Better than any alternative you can suggest.
Indeed.
Alrighty, so before we go anywhere else, how was the MUFON symposium earlier this month?
I wasn't there.
Oh, really?
I was in Roswell 2 weeks earlier.
Oh, okay. Well, how was that?
That went extremely well. Best crowd in 3 years, and lots of people, lots of interest, lots of books being signed, etc. So Roswell is maintaining its status as one of the premier events. I mean, the museum is open all year long, of course.
Yeah.
But,
not surprising.
You know, what a lot of people don't realize is if you're in Roswell, it's because you want to be there. It isn't on the way to anywhere.
No.
You know, it's 200 miles from Amarillo, 200 miles from El Paso, 200 miles from Albuquerque. So So it's not on in the mainstream, but boy, they turn out in droves, and I'm so glad to see it.
So are the leaders of Roswell, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I don't even get a cut, you know.
Right.
Alrighty, so let's kick off with something a little simple. What first got you interested in UFOs?
Being a cheapskate.
Really?
Being a cheapskate?
Yeah,
Okay.
in 1958, I was a young nuclear physicist, 24, working for General Electric on the exciting aircraft nuclear propulsion program. Now, that wasn't just a little study. We employed 3,500 people, 1,100 more engineers and scientists. That year, we spent $100 million, which, believe it or not, was quite a bit of money in 1958. Anyway, my wife and I were ordering books from a mail-order book place, Marlboro, and I needed one more book so I wouldn't have to pay shipping. And there was the report on unidentified flying objects by Air Force Captain Edward Ruppelt, who had headed the Air Force Project Blue Book in the early 50s. And the book sounded interesting, and the Air Force was a co-sponsor of our aircraft nuclear propulsion program. They were the good guys, I thought, then. And I figured, you know, if these things are real, and I didn't have an opinion because I didn't have any information, and if they were real and used nuclear energy, boy, that would really help our program, ANP, aircraft nuclear propulsion. Also, I thought that, it might be interesting reading, and if worse comes to worse, it would be worth a laugh. And after all, it was only $1 marked down from $2.95, a hardcover book. Still have it, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
So I got the book, I read it, and it turns out, in retrospect, to have been a very fortuitous choice of first book. Because it didn't convince me, but it intrigued the heck out of me, and I shared it with a neighbor. Charlie was 10 years older than I was, and he was an engineer. And he was more impressed than I was, and I respected Charlie. And when I saw him 10 years later, I wasn't speaking at the time I read the book. I saw him at a meeting of the Institute of Electronic Engineers in Connecticut. First thing he and his wife said, "We knew you when you didn't believe in flying saucers," which pleased me greatly. So I read that book. I moved out to California, had a good librarian, read another 12 books, some of which were trash, and if I'd read them first, I'd have never read another one. And then I made an extraordinarily lucky discovery. At the University of California, Berkeley Library, I found a copy of Project Blue Book Special Report 14. Biggest study ever done for the Air Force, and what was surprising was it hadn't been mentioned in any of the dozen books that I'd read. And it was chock full of data on 3,201 sightings, 240 charts, tables, graphs, and maps. But what really caught my eye, the guy who put it out included the statement, the official Air Force press release, 1955, with a quote from the Secretary of the Air Force, Donald Quarles. And that made me mad, because in the quote, here's the Secretary of the Air Force lying to the American public. He said, quote, "On the basis of this report, we believe that no objects such as those popularly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been explained as other things, as conventional phenomena or illusions," is really the way he put it, if there had been more information available. Now, the only trouble with that statement is, I had the report in front of me. I had the 240 charts, tables, graphs, and maps. The unknowns were not 3%. They were 21.5%. That's a long way from me. And furthermore, they were completely separate from the 9.3% that were listed as insufficient information. Now, in the report, it also said that they did a chi-square analysis. They asked an obvious question. They had all these charts, tables, graphs, and maps. Is there really any difference between the unknowns, the only ones we're interested in, and the knowns? Maybe we just missed the boat, and if you look at the apparent size, color, shape, speed, etc., they're the same, those two groups. They did a chi-square statistical analysis. The probability that the unknowns were just misknowns was less than 1%. Furthermore, they had a rule. No sighting could be listed as an unknown unless all 4 of the final report evaluation, scientists agreed it was an unknown. And he too could label it anything else: aircraft, balloon, astronomical, etc. And they did a quality evaluation of all the sightings. Turns out the better the quality, the more likely to be unexplainable. So that report really, it got me angry on the one hand. I don't like being lied to. I mean, I worked under security. I was working then under security, and sometimes you have to tiptoe around the truth. But a blatant lie, and the press release didn't even give the title of the report. Surely if it had, some reporter would have been happy to say, what happened to 1 through 13? Never heard anything about them. Well, they hadn't. They were all still classified at that time, you know. And they didn't say who did the work. Battelle Memorial Institute, Columbus, Ohio, a very well-respected research and development firm. Anyway, that report really got me going, and I joined a couple of UFO groups, the old APRO and NICAP, to get more information. And it was takeoff from their time. And what is amazing is we still have, it's almost as if the media said, hey, we aren't going to talk about that. That's got too much solid evidence in it. Look, my University of Chicago classmate, Carl Sagan, twice has publicly stated, there are interesting sightings that aren't reliable. There are reliable sightings that aren't interesting, but there are no interesting and reliable sightings. Totally false. He never gives a reference, of course, doesn't cite a source, just does his research by proclamation. And so that's typical of the nasty, noisy negativists, as I call them. Don't bother me with the facts, my mind's made up, is the first rule. And second, you know, what the public doesn't know, I'm not going to tell them. And third, if you can't attack the data, attack the people. It's easier. Nobody will know the difference.
Exactly.
And fourth, do your research by proclamation. Investigation is too much trouble, and nobody's going to give you a hard time if they don't have the facts. So I'm an extremist, if you will. I want solid information. And you don't often get it from the government. As a matter of fact, let me throw in one other thing here about Blue Book. Because all the noisy negativists will refer to Project Blue Book. But they don't refer to General Carol Bolander's statement, which led to the closure of Project Blue Book in 1969 after the University of University of Colorado study. The Condon report recommended Blue Book be closed because it wasn't contributing anything to science or intelligence. General Bolander was an Air Force general who was asked, what should we do about Project Blue Book? This is in 1969. He was not connected with it. His job was to work on the lunar excursion module, and we landed on the moon, as you may recall, in July of 69.
Yeah.
And as he pointed out to me, I think I'm the only one who ever talked to him, because I didn't find out about him until 10 years later, and I managed to locate him. And I got a copy of his memo. And in the memo, he said, reports of UFOs which could affect national security are made in accordance with JNAP, Joint Army-Navy Air Force Publication 146, or Air Force Manual 55-11, and are not part of the Blue Book system. An astonishing statement. 2 paragraphs later, he says, if we close Project Blue Book, the public won't have a place to report UFO sightings. However, as previously noted, reports which could affect national security will continue to be investigated using the procedures established for that purpose. Doesn't matter. Since that time, the Air Force said, we don't have anything more to do with UFOs. Blue Book was closed. That's it. Nothing going on. A flat-out lie. And when I talked to him on the phone, I said, it sounds to me like you're saying there were 2 separate channels, communication channels. Yes, there were. One is for reports which could affect national security. Like I had a case where a UFO went down the runway at a Strategic Air Command base where nuclear weapons are stored. That's a national security problem. It ain't supposed to be there, you know. And otherwise, if my wife and I go out at the end of the driveway and see a saucer fly over, no big deal. Happens all the time. So the nasty, noisy negativists never talk about General Bolander's work. He's dead now, I checked. It's an interesting world in which the press and the scientific community have jointly abdicated their responsibility, which is to stick out make their efforts to collect data about the subject before expressing opinions, as they so often do. A good example of that, incidentally, the New York Times. All the news that's fit to print.
Or all the news that fits.
Yeah.
I think that's a better description. They put out an article about the explanation number 4 of the Roswell incident, the crash test dummies article. Mm-hmm. Front page, Sunday New York Times, above the fold. Now, you can't get a better placement than that.
No.
And in this article, they bought a stupid Air Force explanation number 4, that is crash test dummies. Now, there's two major problems. I talked to the man who had been in charge of the program. I don't know why the Air Force didn't. They had his picture in their big fat report. And the major problem is none were dropped until 6 years after Roswell. I mean, what's 6 years between friends? Just a little time travel, doesn't matter,
Exactly.
Secondly, there's a picture shown, and I talked to the man in charge of the program in person, Colonel Majestic. In the picture, you can see, and as he pointed out to me, for the test to be meaningful, planes were flying higher and farther than ever before, and you wanted to be sure if you had to jump out of a plane at 40,000 feet that you didn't freeze to death on the way down, that you weren't clobbered, whatever. The dummies were 6 feet tall and 175 pounds and were in flight gear because it affects the temperature and the heating and the drag and all that sort of thing. 2 important points. Instead, we have the Air Force suggesting that anybody in New Mexico, if they saw one of these crash test dummies, would immediately have presumed it was an alien invasion going on. Squished from 6 feet to 4 feet with a big head. I mean, that's the dumbest explanation you can imagine. They got away with it. So the press owes us all some effort to get the facts straight.
Quite true.
All right, so we're going to move on a little bit to something a little more, moderately recent, the whole exopolitics movement. And just a few months ago, we had on a guest who talked about that whole, what was it, like a mock congressional hearing or something? I forgot what it was called.
The citizens hearing.
The citizens hearing, that. Yeah.
Citizens hearing on disclosure.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So what do you think about all that?
Well, I was there. I did my piece. I read my several papers into the record and answered questions, and I was there out of self-defense. I am not in favor of everything being put out on the table, which surprises some people. But why should the United States put out data it may have gleaned from study of crash saucer wreckage if the Russians and Chinese don't put out their data? Does that make any sense?
Nope.
No, not at all. That's a very good point. I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Well, I worked under security for 14 years, and I'm a respecter of required security. And sure, there were times when there were stupid things. I think the guy in charge of security on the AMP program thought at one time that we would come up with a magic paint that we could paint on stuff that would absorb radiation. So he thought everything about radiation shielding, which was my bailiwick, should be classified. That was a bit extreme, to say the least. But the notion that you should not give out technical data which could help your enemies is a rational one as far as I'm concerned. And I'm sure the Russians think the same way. Why should we put out anything if the U.S. and China don't put out anything?
Quite true.
So the hearings were interesting. They lasted for a week. And I should add that unlike the 6 former congressmen, 5 congressmen, 1 senator, I did not get paid $20,000 for spending a week.
Yeah, we mentioned that to that was Gary Hesseltine we had on, by the way.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
We got paid our expenses. And, that's okay. I'm not complaining about that. But just so people don't think I was there for the money. There's no money there to be there for. Yet, there was some very well-received testimony. The foreign testimony was particularly well-received. There were leading military guys, from Peru and from Chile and from Brazil and from England. And, there were a lot of good people and a lot of good Americans. And I think the testimony of the guys connected with the nuclear-tipped missiles that got taken off the line when a UFO was present that stuff was extremely well received. I wasn't a real fan of Steve Greer's movie. He's made claims about, setting up the evil big businessman. We have free energy, but these guys don't want us to get it, so they're making hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, that's an extreme claim. He's never demonstrated that there is free energy, and that we know what it is, and if only these greedy people would stop doing what they're doing, the whole world would be a great place. Well, that sounds great, but there was no evidence provided to substantiate that. And so it was an interesting time. Do I think anything great will come out of it? Well, I don't know. I'm waiting to see the movie. They put out on the airwaves. The hearings were filmed, in other words, live.
Yeah.
And there's supposed to be a movie that will dilute that down in time. I mean, make it less than 2 hours long. And everybody will be able to see it. And so that would be nice, I suppose. Whether any good will come out of it, I don't know. It seemed, though, that the ex-congressman thought it would be a better idea, instead of going to Congress, go to the United Nations. And they may be right. I'm the only one who was speaking at this one that also spoke at the congressional hearings of 1968. That shows you how old I am.
Time flies and you're having fun, Stan.
Yeah. And also, I provided testimony at the UN, and so I think it's probably a good idea. Back then, the U.S. was able to kibosh the recommendations that a project be set up, but I don't think it carries as much weight now as it did then.
Probably not.
So that would be interesting to see if that happens, and I'd be happy to contribute to another congressional symposium. What the heck?
Sure.
Again, you don't get paid tons of money for doing any of this stuff.
Yeah,
that's true. So moving on from that, move it to a sort of a next step, which is the exopolitics movement. And, well, first of all, what is it, and what's your opinion of it?
Well, what I can see of it doesn't impress me that much. I think there's a lot of theorizing, and my view of the way the universe outside of Earth exists is different from a lot of people's. I think that there are civilizations all over the place out there, some of them much more advanced than we are. We are a very primitive society whose major activity is tribal warfare, and so I think aliens are coming here for good reasons on their viewpoint, based on one major assumption I make about every advanced civilization. It's concerned about its own survival and security. And at the end of World War II, there were 3 signs that the idiots on Earth were not to be trusted and would soon be able to bother them, meaning less than 100 years, which on a cosmic timescale is nothing. The 3 signs were nuclear weapons, powerful rockets, the V-2, which were used for killing, not for sending mail between Germany and England, and powerful radar, which was really the beginning of the modern electronic era. Really wasn't any radar we're talking about a few years before World War II. And isn't it amazing? The only place in the whole world in July 1947, when Roswell happened, where we could study all 3 of these technologies was southeastern New Mexico. That's where Roswell is. First nuclear weapons test at Trinity site. That's where we had our tests being run on the powerful V-2 rockets. And that's where we had our best radar. But sometimes the rockets went south instead of north. Very distressing to the Mexicans, incidentally. Now, admittedly, I had an English astronomer who was saying on a program we did in England that why would an alien especially want to go to New Mexico? All there is sand. And I said, you ever been there? No. You don't know that 2 of the 3 nuclear weapons labs in the United States are in New Mexico? That's where we were testing the captured German rockets? More classified work going on there than any place else. Well, he didn't know any of those things.
Really?
Well, he said, well, they could have gone to the Soviet Union. I said, sorry, they didn't test their first A-bomb until 1949. We're talking July 47. Then he shut up for a while, anyway. You know, what I'm saying is that you got to look at the facts. Another fact that constantly gets left out of reports by the noisy negativists of the nonsense about Roswell, as they put it, is that was the most classified base in the United States. That the 509th, the group that was stationed there, the most elite military group in the entire world, very simple reason. They dropped the A-bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and 2 more the next year in Operation Crossroads in the Pacific. They were the only nuclear weapons group in the entire world. Somehow that gets left out of the discussions by the debunkers. Just a bunch of soldiers sitting around with nothing better to do than to make up stories. Hardly. You know, and let me stress the nuclear point for a minute. I get all this nonsense. You can't get here from there. Look how much energy it would take to get to the nearest galaxy. I don't care. There are over 1,000 stars within 55 light years of here. The next galaxy, Andromeda, is 2 million light years away. Who cares? What difference does it make? But the big thing is, nuclear fusion would get us to the stars if we wanted to spend the money. We figured out that's how all the stars in the universe produced their energy in 1938. Our first atomic bomb was 1945. That was fission. It only released the energy of, let's say, 17,000 tons of TNT. That's the first atomic bomb. A big bomb in 1944 was 10 tons of TNT energy release. Our first fusion device, 1952. 10 million tons of TNT energy released. And the Russians let off one that was 50 million tons of TNT energy released. And if you use a fusion rocket, and I worked on them in the 1960s, you can kick particles out the back end of the rocket that have 10 million times as much energy per particle as they get in a dumb old chemical rocket. So I hear all kinds of nonsense. You know, it's as if people don't realize that it's the year 2013, not 1813.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be right back. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on 1240 AM, WOON in Rhode Island here, and beautiful Blackstone Valley of New England, and we'll be right back with our guest, Stanton Friedman. Stay with us.
Hi, everybody. This is Mark Garrow, the host of PRN's Garage Pass, where I keep you up to date with all the latest NASCAR racing news. Garage Pass can be heard right here on WOON every Tuesday through Saturday mornings at 7:35 and is sponsored by Simon Chevrolet, 114 Fortin Drive, Woonsocket. Remember, Simon Chevrolet is always open online at simonchevy.com. Garage Pass, Simon Chevrolet, and WOON Woonsocket Radio, a winning combination.
ON Radio, ON Worldwide.
Okay, we wanted to mention several charities Ben and I have adopted. You can find that on BehindTheParanormal.com or our regular site, NewEnglandGhosts.com, which I understand is currently under a cyber attack, we're told, so you might not be able to access it until later. However, I do want to mention particularly USA Cares, which provides financial and advocacy assistance to post-9/11 active duty U.S. military personnel, veterans and their families. If they're stuck for the mortgage that month, out goes a check from these great people. So I ask you to check that out, usacares.org. And we are trying to form a chapter in Rhode Island, so let us know if you're interested in that. Also, Canadian Veterans Advocacy. As you know, our Canadian cousins and friends have been with us shoulder to shoulder since the beginning of the War on Terror. And our good friend Michael Blaze up in Ontario has started this wonderful group, Canadian Veterans Advocacy, which works in the Parliament and in the local legislatures and provincial legislatures for legislation, I should say, that is very is what veterans deserve, and also on other issues that have to do with veterans affairs in Canada. So check that out too, CanadianVeteransAdvocacy.org. And as I say, we are apparently having some problems with the website right now. We're told by our hosts in Nova Scotia that the problem is sort of global, and there's some sort of an attack going on, and they should be straightened out before the end of the day. They have a lot of people working on it. But BehindTheParanormal.com is our main website, and for the show and for the over 500 podcasts we have. So let's get back to Stan Friedman, our guest. And Stan, the matter of exopolitics, we've had a lot of people on the show about this, and it differs from the disclosure thing because they believe, as I understand it, that we need to be prepared to deal with whoever's operating these flying saucers, with these alien life forms or whatever they may be. But that assumes, it seems, that they would consider us equals. Do you think that is a realistic or a safe assumption?
No, I don't. I tell people I don't talk to the squirrels in my backyard.
Yeah.
And people don't seem to understand, well, if they don't think we're equals, why are they coming here?
Oh, yeah.
Because they know we're idiots, and we have, a simple number. Not only that we killed 50 million of our own kind during World War II, and we destroyed 1,700 cities, we have also exploded 2,000 nuclear weapons, only 2 of them on people, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody looking at us says, hey, we don't want them out here. I think they're here to quarantine us. You can't, we had one Pearl Harbor. Nobody out there is going to want to be surprised by idiots whose job it is to kill. I mean, just a simple figure. This year, the military budget of the planet Earth will be approximately $1 trillion. How many children died yesterday of preventable disease or starvation instead of being fed by some of that billion or $1 trillion? So, from an alien viewpoint, we're not nice guys. You can understand why they've interfered with the being able to be launched of a number of nuclear-tipped missiles. There's a book, Nukes and UFOs. They're Bob Salas's book. He was a commander in one of these installations. 10 Minuteman missiles went offline one after the other with a UFO sitting over the front gate. I can understand that, and things have happened like that in Russia. So, I don't think we're equals to them. Look, the first long-distance radio communication on planet Earth took place in 1901. Marconi's people up in Newfoundland. 1901. That's not very long ago. Man's been on the planet, or the planet's been suitable for man for billions of years. There are stars out there that are 10 billion years old. And also there are stars that have nearby neighbors. Unlike us, we're out in the boondocks. Next star over 4.3 light years. But my favorite stars, as you know, you've had Kathleen Martin on, I believe, or Will Never on, talking about Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience. The base stars, we believe, involved in that particular experience, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli, constellation of Reticulum, which means the net in Latin. They're only 39.3 light years away, but they're 30 times closer to each other than the sun is to the next star over. We're in the boonies.
Exactly. Stan, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute because we have a caller.
Sure.
This is Bob from, is it Bob from Franklin?
No, from Cumberland.
Oh, from Cumberland, sorry.
Yeah.
Bob, go ahead. You're on the air with Stan Friedman.
Yeah, I couldn't pass up a chance to speak with Stanton Friedman. What a pleasure it is for me.
Thank you.
Mr. Friedman, what is your take on do you believe that we have a secret space program?
Well, you mean with a base on the moon and maybe one on Mars and all this sort of stuff?
Well,
Serpo and all that.
Aurora, perhaps, or...
Well, I'm certainly convinced, having worked under security for 14 years and been to 20 archives, that secrets are being kept from us. There's no question about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I have not seen evidence of the secret space program.
Have you ever heard of Gary McKinnon?
He's the guy in England, isn't he?
He's a guy in England. Supposedly he's mildly autistic. But anyway, he broke into NASA's database, and he came across things that listed non-terrestrial officers, and it listed a bunch of vessels that are not ocean-going vessels. Have you heard about that?
Well, I've heard about that, and again, I put it in my gray basket. How's that? Not enough data to say yay or nay. I don't know.
Okay. All right. And I was, about a month ago, Bill Burns was helping Paul, and I asked him a question about the Phoenix Lights and whether he thought it was possibly, I'm talking about the big craft now, could it possibly be a hologram? And he went on to explain that, well, he spoke with the governor, Symington, who said it flew over his house, and he said it looked solid. But I didn't get a chance to ask him the other question. I've saw people I've seen on these special shows on UFOs about the specific case. They say that one guy said he said it looked like, because it passed right over him, he said it looked like mirage, and he could see the lights or the stars right through the vehicle, which leads me to think that it possibly could be a hologram. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I certainly expect if we could make a hologram, they could make holograms. That's no big deal. You know, the Phoenix Lights, I've talked to a number of witnesses. Just got back from Phoenix at 2:30 this morning, as a matter of fact. And everybody I talked to there, they were solid. They blocked out the sky. It was a very beautiful night, March 13th, back in 97, I guess.
Right, it was, yeah.
And blocked out the sky, and as it went over silently and huge, then you could see the stars again. So that one was solid. That doesn't mean they don't know how to do other things. You know, we have to leave room for aliens knowing a few things we don't know. That shocks people. It bothers them. You mean we're not the smartest people in the universe? Come on. Well, you know, we're not, is all I can say. That's not only because of how we behave. Killing 50 million of our own kind is not exactly a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I'd like to just say that our human race, we kind of put ourselves down, but we're controlled by a very small, minutiae group of people that are really calling the shots, so we can't really blame ourselves entirely.
Well, we'll let them do the controlling, you know. Yeah, it isn't a question of blame. It's a question of, from an alien viewpoint, to be realistic. We're not nice guys.
You're very good.
You know, think about that.
That's true.
I worry about the world in which my great-grandson will grow up.
Boy, tell me about it. Boy,
yeah.
I have a new granddaughter myself, and I fear for their future, especially the way the country's going.
I worry about my son.
Time, I don't want to step on Paul's toes.
Okay, well, very good. Well, thank you very much, Bob.
Let me give you my website while we're at it.
Yeah, please.
www.StantonFriedman, FRIEDMAN.com.
And Stan,
it tells you how to reach me and how to get all my books and DVDs and all that sort of stuff, you know.
Oh, I've read many of your books. So that's why it was a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, well, Bob took the words right out of my mouth, Stan. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your website, your books, what you're working on, and where people can find out more about you, which you started to do.
A perfect segue.
Great. I should add that there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I try to tell it like it is, but I also am willing to say, I don't know. It's in my gray basket. Because I don't know everything. Now, that will disappoint some people, but I do know this, that the nasty, noisy negativists don't know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I specialize in dealing with them. I've done debates on coast-to-coast radio and won. Haven't done one I've lost yet on there.
Mm-hmm.
Even at the Oxford University Debating Society, my team won 60 to 40%. The point is, there's an enormous amount of solid information. We don't need to settle for junk. For the wishful thinking of the nasty, noisy negativists. And I write a monthly column for the MUFON Journal. And I don't think I'm going to run out of material because there's all kinds of stupid things. Well, let me give you a prime example. The English Astronomer Royal. Now, what more exalted position could you have than that? Last year said, only kooks see UFOs. And why would anybody come here just to meet with kooks? I mean, no reference, no information. He obviously knows nothing about the subject. How about all the astronomers that have seen UFOs? Are they kooks too? Or the pilots?
Mm-hmm.
And, I presume he doesn't fly any place because pilots, there are thousands of pilots who have had sightings. They don't like to publicly admit it, but there is a group called NARCAP, National Aviation Reporting Association for Anomalous Phenomena, something like that.
Mm-hmm. We have a French pilot who is a show reporter, so to speak, from that vicinity. Excuse me. And he doesn't dare give his name, certainly not on the air, because he's an active French pilot for a well-known airline. So, but Stan, we're burning up the hour so fast, as we always do. But we wanted to mention that you are the keynote speaker at the first New England UFO Conference in Leominster, Massachusetts on October 26th. Can you tell us about the conference and give us a preview of your own presentation?
Well, I haven't decided what I'm going to say yet.
Well, that's a good, honest answer.
Come along all the time, but I'm looking forward to it. It's a New England based conference, and I live in Fredericton, New Brunswick, which is on the fringe of New England.
Yeah.
Some people say, how much more fringy can you get than Stan Friedman? But anyway.
But we're looking forward to seeing you there. We're going to be doing live interviews in front of an audience with you and the other speakers, hopefully, if they can get that organized, and it'll be a lot of fun, I'm sure. So I certainly wanted to ask you, from your particular perspective, and we deal with all sorts of subjects that don't have anything to do with UFOs, but when we do, we try to have good people like yourself. We have Ted Phillips, Peter Robbins, people of that kind.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a growing perception, at least for many of the guests in this field, that ufology is part of a larger paranormal picture. We ourselves usually take I suppose you might call it the shamanic research or the ghost research or whatever you want to call it. And
names are indeed fleeting.
They are, and our language isn't up to actually talking about this stuff. And we are very often led, since we investigate cases for long periods of time, to UFOs. I mean, you wouldn't think that would be logical, but we do. We're constantly being led to grays and UFOs that people think are ghosts and all this business. So what is your perception of so I suppose what we call the pan-paranormal movement? Are you seeing this in ufology? Are you seeing people...
Yes, I am.
Okay.
The thing is, it would astonish me if an advanced technological civilization, which is what I think UFOs represent, maybe several of them, many of them, didn't do things and know about things that we don't understand and don't know how to duplicate. In other words, technological progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. A laser isn't just a better light bulb, entirely different physics. So I would be astonished if aliens weren't doing things that we call paranormal just because we don't know how to explain them. Who gave people the notion that we're the most advanced beings in the whole universe?
You can blame the Enlightenment for that, I guess.
First radio broadcast, 1901, long-distance radio. I mean, sure, there's Pat Robertson out there saying that indeed all the intelligent life in the universe is on Earth. And he also says that the planet was created 4004 BC on a Thursday afternoon, I think it was.
Oh, dude.
And I think he left out 6 zeros. So, it's like the contrast with the SETI guys, silly effort to investigate, SETI, Frank Drake said not too long ago there might be as many as 8,000 places in the galaxy that could send signals. Why they would is another story, but the current, because of Kepler, our recognition seems to be that, my goodness, there might be 8 billion places where there are living, thinking people in our galaxy alone. Why they would be interested in us, except to make sure we don't get out there, I don't know.
Well, one of the philosophical issues that we have brought up on several occasions, and a lot of people said that we were the first ones who asked them this, and we've asked you this before, but the notion of being advanced, the state of being advanced, we seem to assume, as you know, we assume many things in our society, and even in this kind of research. One of the assumptions is that the definition of advanced is technological advancement, gadgets, and that sort of technology.
Well, I mean, look how stupid we are. We have tons of gadgets.
Yeah, I would rather be at the beck and call, not the beck and call, but rather be at the contact point with people who are advanced morally, spiritually, ethically. Look at the Nazis. I mean, they had plenty of technology. I mean, what say you on all that?
Well, I'm in full agreement with you. I think we need to look around for a much bigger picture. Being advanced technologically isn't enough. Look, we killed 50 million of our own kind in World War II. We destroyed 1,700 cities. Can anybody say it took an advanced civilization to do that? We'll spend $1 trillion this year on things military, while thousands of children die of preventable disease or starvation every day.
Okay.
So, morally, are we an advanced civilization? I don't think so. As a matter of fact, you can say that, gee, maybe this is a penal colony. They dumped all their bad boys and girls here, and that's why we're so nasty to each other.
I have thought about that since you said it many years ago, and I heard you say that. I think that's a distinct possibility.
I think it's very plausible.
Yeah.
Well, you know, in Australia, they're very proud of their convict heritage, believe it or not.
Yeah, so we're told. Yeah, well, we got a letter from Australia recently where this retired couple was looking out their window and saw a dinosaur walk by. They're talking about multiverse experiences, not something that happens every day. But back to our subject. We are wondering, too, about the changing, for lack of a better term, physical nature of UFOs, as pointed out by Ted Phillips, who's a good friend of yours and ours.
Yeah. And we just had an anonymous caller call in and say that there was a UFO sighting this Saturday, like right over near Jay's Deli here in Woonsocket, like right near Route 99. And for anybody who has any information on this, you can shoot us an email, Ben@BehindTheParanormal.com or Paul BehindTheParanormal.com. Yes, the emails are indeed working. But back to the point that he mentioned that these were triangular shaped, from what I recall, because there's a lot of noise going on. But it's strange that you see these wedge-shaped UFOs now, as opposed to the saucer-shaped things. What do you think happened with that?
Well, I think we still have reports of huge, I'll call them cigar-shaped motherships, for want of a better phrase. I think we got Chevrolets and we got Buicks and we've got Rolls Royces. It wouldn't be surprising if there were many different models.
Or many different species visiting us, or whatever it is they're doing,
And each has its own vehicle system, what can I say? And remember that if these things work by interacting with the atmosphere, for example, a magneto-aerodynamic system, it may depend on the local conditions back there. Maybe certain shapes are more appropriate for certain places. That wouldn't be surprising, you know.
And we also wanted to ask you about the Majic. I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but I want to get all this in.
That's right.
The Majic Men movie. What's going on there?
Well, options have been taken on my book, Top Secret Majic, Majic, and Don Schmidt and Tom Carey's book, Witness to Roswell, to make a dynamic movie, Majic Men. And the script has been revised 4 times. Mm-hmm. And the latest news I've had is that Jeff Bridges' agent is interested in having him play me.
That's great.
Well, it would be okay. I'm not guaranteeing that. Hollywood is, if anything, fickle.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, but it would be fun, and it would be, a combination of all the President's Men and JFK. But with Jeff Bridges playing me, I'd even go to see that.
So would we.
Definitely.
That sounds great. Okay, so Stan, I guess this is the last question we'll have time for, but I can't think of anyone better to answer this than you. What, after all these years, or have you come to a conclusion about what these craft really are and whatever is occupying them, what their agenda might be, or are there varying agendas, varying species, or...
Well, I think the situation is every bit as confused as it must have been down in the Bahamas after Columbus, and the Indian chief saying, who are these guys? What do they want? How come their ships look different? They talk different languages. Some are here to convert us, some are here to kill us, some are here to steal from us.
Or all three.
Yes, or all three. So it wouldn't be surprising if there were many different groups. Every library in the neighborhood lists Earth. Nice place to visit. Wouldn't want to live there,
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things, this is a brief observation. When I saw the Phoenix Lights, it was from an airplane. Because we got to San Diego and they said they'd seen the Phoenix Lights about when we were flying over.
Oh.
And they seemed to be operating goes back to Bob's observation. They seemed to be operating as separate craft, and there were 3 of them. one of which appeared to land. And, of course, we're, whipping by 33,000 feet. So, I have military experience with this kind of thing, but you can't. Yeah, it's really difficult to tell. I would guess they were at about 10,000 feet, but I'm the only one, as far as I know, who's seen them from the air or has at least reported doing so, which is probably not entirely the case. But anyway, I just wanted to add that these things do seem to vary from what I've seen, from solid craft to semi-solid and to separate craft. I mean, it could do the same. I suppose it's conceivable that the same craft could change shape with the proper technology.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Just because we can't do it doesn't mean nobody else can.
Exactly. Well, Stan, thank you for a very interesting conversation, as always, and we will see you in Leominster on October 26th.
You certainly will, and you can see me at www.stantonfriedman.com.
Excellent. Just very quickly, are you working on any more books?
I'm thinking about one, let's put it that way.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll look forward to hearing about that.
It's in the foundry, so to speak.
Very good. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks much, guys.
All right.
Have a good one.
Stan Friedman, everybody. Okay, so again, he will be the keynote speaker at the first New England UFO Conference in Leominster, Massachusetts on October 26th. That will take place at the City Hall, right up there, right off the highway. It's going to be a really great time.
What day of the week is that? Do you know?
That's a Saturday.
It's a Saturday?
Yeah. Also, Kathleen Marden, whom you've heard on this show, will be there. And several other people who are very well known, Peter Robbins and several others. I believe Peter Robbins will be there. I don't know, but we're going to have some more people. Yeah, Peter will be there, and we're going to have some more of the speakers on the show as we go.
The closer we get to
that
the
date. And again, we ourselves will be there. You have a chance to the highlight of your life. Meet Paul and Ben Eno, and we're going to be conducting live.
If that is the highlight of your life.
Hardly. Conducting live interviews with all these marvelous folks and experts in front of a live audience there at the venue where they're going to be showing UFO movies. So we're doing our interviews between the movies, so it should be fun.
Oh, it sounds like lots of fun.
Anyway, so good. Okay, and we'll have a radio booth there as well. Okay, so Ben, tell us more about what this.
Well, you see,
caller reported. And when that was?
I was very distracted during most of the call.
Yeah, Ben works here at the station as well as helping to host this show, so he has to answer the phone and stuff.
And I still have to pay attention to what the guest is saying and such. So from what I did pick up from it, our caller was driving down it was near Route 99, and he saw these three shapes come over the horizon, like going right over Jay's Deli. And,
this is northern Rhode Island here we're broadcasting from, for those who are not in the area.
Right here in our very own Woonsocket, Rhode Island. He didn't want to go on the air and talk about it, but he mentioned that he was like, it was a big thing. It was a big to do. Like the point of it was orange. I do remember that part. And there were these two other shapes near it that looked like they were like 2x4s. And it was a cloudy night, so he knew it wasn't a plane.
This was at night.
And he had two other witnesses with him, and they all pulled over and got out of the car and took pictures with their phone. I asked if he had any pictures, and he said, "No, I don't." But one of his friends did.
I'd love to see those. Yeah.
Yeah, I would too. I don't know how they'd get sent to us, but you never know. There's ways around that.
Well, of course.
So yeah, he said, hey, could you put the word out, see if anybody else experienced something like this? And so that's why I'm saying, hey, if you happen to see anything this past Saturday, then shoot us an email.
About what time was that?
Actually, I didn't get the time. I'm assuming later at night, where they could actually pull over and not have to worry about traffic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, perhaps that person could communicate with us and tell us the time. That would help a lot. But in any case, that's something that I think would have interested our old friend Joe Ferrier, who, of course, had
definitely.
a show on this station before ours for 50 years, over 50 years. And wonderful, wonderful fella, well remembered in the Valley, would have been very interested. I asked Stan, though, if he had known Joe Ferrier, who was a sort of a well-known UFO expert in the 1960s, and Stan did not. I'd sent Stan a picture, a copy of Probe magazine, which Joe used to publish. But Joe had told us that he backed away from this because things were getting too weird in his life, and his life went back to normal.
Well, northern Rhode Island's a very strange place. The whole Blackstone Valley is very weird.
Yeah, we're not talking about just the politics either.
No. Just the whole area. A lot of strange things happen.
Right. Well, in any case, that's about it for us tonight. And many thanks to our producer, Ben himself, busy guy. And next week, August 5th, we will welcome geoglyphologist Arthur Farum for a discussion of ancient signposts in the landscape. So send your questions or comments now to Paul at BehindTheParanormal.com, Ben at BehindTheParanormal.com, or use the question form at our show website, BehindTheParanormal.com.
And on our CBS radio edition of the show on Sunday, August 4th, in Boston, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Windsor, and Seattle/Vancouver, and on radio.com, we will welcome broadcaster Ted Torbish for a discussion of his parallel world experience.
And we leave you this evening with a thought from, of all people, the great 13th century Scottish warrior William Wallace of Braveheart fame. Every man dies, not every man really lives. I'm Paul Eno.
I'm Ben Eno, and we still have another 45 seconds.
Oh, you're supposed to tell me these things.
Sorry, I'm getting confused here.
Okay. But in any case, we do. It'll be interesting next week on our CBS edition
because you won't be here.
Ben will be by himself, but he's an old hand at this. He's a student in radio and DJ in WERS in Boston, and this sort of thing. He's well experienced, and I'll look forward to listening to it when I'm on the road. And we're going to have, of course, Ted Torbish, who was a show host on an internet radio network, InceptionRadio.com. His show has the interesting name of The Stench of Truth. We've been on it several times, and he's a great guy. He's going to tell us about his multiverse experiences, and we ask you if you'd like to contribute yours, let us know. And that'll be, again, the website's BehindTheParanormal.com. You can contact us through that. And if you've had an alternate world experience, you believe, or some sort of thing of that kind, as Ted has, a lot of people have had them, and that's it.
And that's all we have time for this evening. Thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we shall see you next time.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.